Oh, it's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. I've been thinking recently quite hard about the olden days. Ooh, take me back to my childhood. Ooh. No, not as far back as that. And I suppose that's part of getting old. Because there's more behind, there's more over that shoulder than there is that way. And that sort of makes you think. And also, having moved units and we're in my new premises now, this is the bunker of doom. Don't frightened. As you unpack, and as I unpack old figures and old photographs and rule sets, you reminisce. You think, oh, I remember. And then a voice from the distance, which sounds very much like your wife, shouts, "Are you reminiscing? Get some work done." And you go, "Oh," and you rush off and you do some work. And I've wondered, I'm sort of racking my brains, which isn't hard, to be honest. My brains don't take much racking. And I was racking my brains to think about the first day I ever went to a Wargames club. So bear with me. It was the autumn of 1972. I'm guessing it was raining because I lived in South Yorkshire, the old West Riding, which I prefer to call it, and it was always raining and foggy, smelly. My brother and I both had soldiers, toy soldiers. We were both into airfix, but I liked a sort of more organised world, perhaps shall we say, than him. But I was 15 and he was 11, so all to be expected. At the time, I didn't sort of see that discrepancy. He was a lad, he was a fellow traveller who shared a room, and we had two beds, and in between the two beds we had a big table, and that was our do-it-yourself table, whatever. And we used to have it set up. We halved it, and we had two halves, and one half was his land, one half was mine. And the first games we played, I had Robin of Sherwood's Airfix Men, and he had World War II Russians. But we tended to get like opposites of things. So I got the Africa Corps, he got the 8th Army. We could never sort of get a game that we both enjoyed. And later on in life, he's gone down a very Victorian high fantasy, romantic view of that world, whereas I've got more realistic fantasy, if you like. Arthurian legends, Britain in 500 AD, researching the history of the period and so on. So we never, there were all squabbles, shall we say. And my dad was working at ICI. Well, they were BNS back then, British Nylon Spinners. And he was working at BNS, and he worked on this machine, extruding nylon on these little white pellets. Would come in and get hot, and they'd melt. And different denier and strengths would come down in different white baubles in. And his job, as far as I could tell, was to just sit there and watch it. Like that. And if something went wrong, he had to unwrong it. That's pretty much it. And he worked long shifts in hot conditions, and it wasn't nice. And they played a lot of cards and drank a lot of beer. You know. But the chap who was stood next to me, Dad, he was watching his machine as well, like that. And they got talking. And somehow or other, they got talking about wargaming. And the fella on the other machine said he went to a Wargames club. And my dad went, "What's that?" So he told him, and he said, "Oh, wargaming for men." Not heard of that. Been a blunt Yorkshire miner, ex-soldier. New to me dad, this different world. So he came home from work and he said to me, and I went to him, "I'm going to take you to the Wargames Club. And it's at the YMCA in Doncaster on a Thursday night. I'm going to come with you. And you've there's no argument, you go in. So, well, okay. Now, at first, I didn't want to go because I liked the games I was playing on my own. I was quite happy playing with my little Airfix men, minding my own business, my Timpo cowboys in my little village. But I thought, well, I know what I thought. I thought exactly this. I thought, if there's a club where you can war game, play soldiers every Thursday, that means I'll get to play soldiers every Thursday, even when my mate Andy don't want to, and when our Tim don't want to. I'll be guaranteed a game. So, sounds good to me. But I was 15 years old. It's I'd never been in the YMCA. I didn't even know what it was. Anyway, we went. Anyway, took all the dark green door and a brass plaque. And we went up these stairs. And at the top was a little door again, and we opened it. And there was a sort of club-sized room, like you'd see in the back room of a pub or wherever, village hall. Wooden planks on the floor, and people had pulled tables out and put them together. And there were various people with figures. And this mate, my dad's, and his pal were playing 300th scale, what they call modern. So it was 6-day war set in the Golan Heights. And they had tanks and infantry, and every now and again an aeroplane would zoom across, and they went that fast at that scale that they pretty much appeared, shot across and disappeared. There weren't any dogfights or anything. And my dad's friend said, come join us. And you'll be all right. So we did. My brother, he was 11, like I say. It was lost on him, straight over his head. I thought, it's interesting, it's okay. There's all these rules. You got to measure, they kept saying, you can measure that for me. And I'll throw that dice. Didn't know why. But you could get coffee. So I went round and I got me coffee and I looked what everybody else was doing. And there were people mainly playing 25mm Hinchcliffe Napoleonic, French and British. Lovely painted. Nice blocks of troops, 30 men in an infantry unit, 12 in a cavalry unit with all the banners and the officers and the artillery, and pretty large armies, lots of scenery. A lot of it was airfix buildings or those old Britain's trees. Do you remember them big Great Britain's trees, and you pegged all the leaves on and they all fell off? And you could get willow, but the oak was the best one because it was huge, and they had some of them in a wood. And they were playing there's a book of rules. It's like a beigey book and a card that had all the bits on they wanted. And they were throwing dice, and one of the dice was really weird. I kept looking at it. I think there's no ones and there's no sixes on that dice. So I hazarded a question. I said to one of these chaps, I said, you've lost your ones and your sixes off your dice, mate. I didn't say that. I said, excuse me, where do you know ones and sixes on your dice? He said, because it is an average dice. It made no sense to me. I didn't know what that meant. But anyway, he showed me. He said, look on this card, if you're charging, you add all that up because you're charging. And then you minus all that because you're charging. And then you throw a plus average dice, that we're going to throw the blue one. Then you throw a minus average dice, we're going to throw that red one. And you adjust them. So if you get -4 plus 3, that's -1. And you alter that on your factors, and then you read that table, it tells you what happens. So, that's interesting. And I went back out of decency, I suppose, to the 6-day war chaps, and I finished their game. And that was the end of the night, really. And came home, and it had been okay. It wasn't overly exciting. I was going to go the following week, mainly because my dad said so. I don't think it was as good as the gaming I was doing at home. But it was the first time I went. So there were no whistles and bells. There was no great, conversion on the road to Damascus. It was just what it was. I don't want to get on too long tonight, so I'm going to stop it now. And then I'm going to do another video straight after this. And it's going to be about what happens next. Keep watching. Ta-da, Chuck.